Okay, my 84-year-old mom is in the audience, so I thought it just occurred to me to say something. When I told her that I'm going to be the moderator for this session, she usually sees me in shapeless pajamas and baggy t-shirts. Her first question was, "Ni enna potukka pore?" So, Ma, I hope you're happy with my sartorial choice. So on that note, I was personally really enchanted when I, heard about Cubbon Reads because it combined four elements: books, trees, silence, and a community. And, I was often reading and studying across green spaces has been romanticized and lauded across many cultures. And in India, we've always grown up with this notion of a guru sort of imparting knowledge from under a tree to a group of students who demonstrate immense focus. And I think reading in green spaces is actually appreciated for deep reasons, because psychological studies show that focus actually increases when you study outdoors or when you read among trees. But the fact that in a place like Bangalore, where conversations often revolve around digital startups, IT companies, pubs, maybe clubs, and other digital distractions and so on, or traffic. The fact that two young founders had created something so refreshing and so startlingly different felt utterly magical. So on that note, Harsh, I just wanted to ask you on how you how this idea came about. Why did you start this movement?
So, hi everyone. We never intended to start a movement as such. Both Shruti and I love cycling. Last December, we started cycling to Cubbon. And before that, I would just go to Cubbon as a visitor, as a runner who is doing a 5K, as a motorcyclist who is just crossing Cubbon Park. But that was the first time when we cycled, we were like, after cycling for 6-8 kilometers from Indranagar to Cubbon, we would want some resting time, and we would started carrying mats. And funnily, the first name of Cubbon Reads was Mat Readers, for God's sake. Thank God we didn't stick to that. Then we changed it to Cubbon Readers. And then also it didn't really ring a bell. Then we changed to Cubbon Reads because we ended up reading 50 pages every Saturday, and it set our weekend on a very great note. So when we posted about it on our personal Instagram, a bunch of our friends, a couple of them are here as well, they mentioned that, is there space on your mat? Can I come and join and sit and read with you guys? And that's how it really got started. And yeah.
Shruti, can you sort of dwell on how, this response, what the initial response was like, and how this just ballooned into a worldwide movement that's now spread across 70 cities?
Sure. So like you mentioned, it was just the two of us going there initially. Some of our friends joined. So from 2 to 4 to 6 to 10 to 20, 35 people, about 50 people. And then this continued for about 5 months this year. It was during the 19th and the 20th editions that we had made a video that went viral on Instagram, and that video just captured the various kinds of readers who come to Cubbon Reads. And within a week, our following grew from about 2,500 followers on Instagram to about 10,000 followers. And that also translated to the number of attendees who came for the consecutive session. So suddenly from about 37 readers to there were more than 300 readers the next time. And then there was just no stopping there, because it got noticed from a lot of people across the world. Now that there are chapters across 70 cities in the world, I mean, it's wholly due to the acceptance that others have found there.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of brand marketers would love to hear how this, how you crack this viral sort of thing. But yeah. Harsh, can you elaborate on why you were so specific that you didn't want this to be a book club? You were very sort of emphatic about that.
Yeah, so I have been part of book clubs, and I remember this one time, there was a prescribed reading. So book clubs operate on a prescribed reading. You have a book to read. Next day, everybody will be given a chance to discuss parts of it. And I'm very wary of discussion, because I remember this one time I read a book through the night because I could not finish it on time. And next morning, groggily, I ended up attending the book session. And when it came to me, I didn't remember anything. So I think reading for pleasure was missing in the whole ecosystem of book clubs. It was always reading for either productivity or for intellectualization. And if you think about fiction, primarily, fiction is something that we read with our own memories intertwined in them. I don't want to know what you thought of the book, because that book might have really meant, for example, a lot of you might hate 5 Point Someone. I went to IIT Delhi, I relate with those characters. So that book, even though I hated his later books, but that really resonated with me. So fiction especially needed non-discussion, and that became a mandate. And also, we live in Bangalore. Bangalore is the hustle capital of India. So there was nothing slowing us down, and our community is based on an ideology of anti-hustle. So at Cubbon Reads, no discussion happens. There's hardly any interaction either. And I think that also allowed and motivated a lot of introverts who don't really want to socialize. So it took away the pressure of socialization and intellectualization from the books. And that's why a lot of people turn up.
Right. Actually, Abraham Verghese, in his session that I just attended, he said, readers, each reader has, creates a kind of movie in their head about what they've just, about like, and it's a very personal movie. So, and often you don't want other opinions washing into that. Yeah. So it's great that you thought about that,
Yeah, I remember one more point, small point. If you've seen Harry Potter, the movie, the face of Dumbledore is whitewashed. But if you have read just the book, there's still a face that is your Holden Caulfield. For me, there's a face to it, Catcher in the Rye. There's no movie. So I think book clubs also, the more articulate and more opinionated person will have their opinion stamped on all the other people. So that's what I was personally not very enthused about. Yeah.
Shruti, can you also talk about the other micro communities that have formed as an offshoot? Because Cubbon Reads is not just for readers. There's Cubbon Folds, and there are other, similar communities.
Yeah. So very interestingly, despite Cubbon Reads being a silent space, there have been a lot of readers who've considered themselves to be better painters, better writers, origamists, knitters, all of that. And it is through, side conversations with them that we had, and they realized that they have better, more suited interests in those creative interests than just reading. And they wanted to create sub-communities within the space of Cubbon Reads itself, because these interests are also, by a sense, silent in nature. So now there's Cubbon Folds for origamists, Cubbon Paints, Cubbon Writes, Cubbon Knits, and they're all held on the same day, during the same hours, in the same space, because ultimately it ties back to all these creative interests being done publicly outdoors and amongst like-minded people around you.
Right. And I think one thing that ties all these activities together, reading, and knitting, origami, and so on, is just the fact that you have to pay attention. So it's almost like Cubbon Reads is forcing us to pay attention to our attention.
Somebody wanted to create a Cubbon Sings, and we didn't tie up with them because it makes it noisy. So silence is also one thing.
Yeah, absolutely, silence. I think because this has mushroomed so quickly, Harsh, I think you've also faced some pushback and resistance. So can you talk about some of those obstacles?
Yeah, so one of our biggest setbacks, which we also wrote about in the caravan, is that none of the BBMP parks in Bangalore allow sitting on the grass. It somehow feels like grass is more important than people, and public space is more of grass space than public space, because the public are being barricaded. So we had a chapter called Yelahanka Reads, and they tried really hard to find, there are at least 20 plus parks in Yelahanka, but they all have to, I think Farooq is here, she is coming all the way from Hebbal, because there is no Yelahanka Reads there, because otherwise, so, and very recently with Lal Bagh, you might have read on the news, in the newspaper as well, Lal Bagh prohibited usage of mats. The article that we wrote, we spoke with horticulturists as well, and they said that only with daily heavy foot traffic, grass can be damaged. We are meeting once a week, that too for 4 hours, and there's no heavy foot traffic. We are not playing cricket there. So the bald patches won't appear, and Cubbon Reads has been a testament to that. There has been absolutely no bald patches in Cubbon where we read. So it feels like it's just vigilante of citizens who think we are somehow damaging flora and fauna, and I would really appreciate if government officials take a different outlook where they tie up with us rather than they are against us. One interesting example to add here is in Sikkim, one of the district magistrates of Sikkim, Gyalsing district, visited us, and she attended Lal Bagh Reads with us. And she took this concept and executed it in all the public schools across Sikkim. So now there are 24 schools where the library period is not held inside the building, but in the park. All the books are outside, and you can actually look for Gyalsing District Reads on Instagram, and you see a lot of reels of kids reading in the park in the sun. And Sikkim is also cold, so sitting in the sun makes more sense. So a lot of, I think, things can be done with association with the government officials who want to make people read like us.
And I also heard, I think, yeah, that's such a terrific, initiative. I also heard that the Lal Bagh readers, because of the fact that they were not allowed to sit on the grass, are using the famous Bangalore trait of ajasmadi and sitting on the benches instead. So, yeah I think...
So they are allowing vendors to sell plastic packets, but our readers have to sit in gazebos and benches. And the point of the park was lounging and lying down.
Yeah. Cubbon Reads has also received a fair amount of media coverage. Any particular aspects of that coverage that have struck you?
Yeah, we are really, really thankful and been super lucky with how welcome the media has been with regards to Cubbon Reads. I mean, not just the media reporters, but even a lot of content creators who visited Cubbon Reads, and they have shared their experiences. The best part is that most of these media reporters who've written about us have also visited Cubbon Reads themselves. So what they write is from completely their own personal experiences. In fact, today also there was a New Indian Express feature on the second page about Cubbon Reads and done really well, mentions about BLF. Unfortunately, in some of the instances, there have been cases of gendered misreporting. For example, in one of the pieces, while Harsh is introduced as an entrepreneur, rightly so, I'm just referred to as his friend, even though we had requested to properly introduce with both our designations mentioned there. Also, at times, some of my quotes have been attributed to Harsh, unfortunately. So it's really sad that that has happened because we both co-founded it together and we are both equally involved.
Yeah.
So our only sincere request to anyone around here is to give the due credit to women founders.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure there are other women co-founders who are facing sort of similar issues. I think absolutely, you have to be very sensitive when you're reporting on two co-founders or, multiple, Harsh, would you like to add to that, actually?
So just the feature that she's mentioning, there was one major magazine, the newspaper featured us, and it said pointers from Snehanshu, which is my name, it is the pointers from Cubbon Reads. It is neither from Shruti. And then we just said that, hey, you have attributed all the quotes to me, not to Shruti. Then he said it cannot be misogynistic because I have two women editors. And then it assumes that women can't be patriarchal, which is totally out of line.
I mean, they haven't seen Kyun Ki Saas Bhi, anyway. So you're also strongly advocating for regional writers at this event. You actually highlight, readers who are reading Kannada books. And so can you just talk about, what prompted you to do that and, how you do that actually? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm a huge fan of Shanbag. I'm missing his session. I'm so sad about it. I got his signature, thankfully, on his latest book. So at Cubbon Reads, we have recently started doing stacking. At the end of the Cubbon Reads, we stack all the books because people are silent. They can't interact. So when you bring everyone together, their books are stacked and then you distribute. That's how you get to know who is reading what. And also you get to interact with the reader of your kind. So we started doing that for Kannada books and all the other regional language books. We started holding it up and asking the reader to come and talk about the book. So they would summarize the book for all of us. And if somebody is interested, they can pick it up. So what started happening was after a couple of sessions of doing that, a lot of Kannada authors who are not very well known, they started coming with their own books. And then they started talking about their books, why did they write it. So that has recently picked up, and we would love for you, if you're based in Bangalore, to come with your regional language book. People bring Assamese book, even Hebrew books. Some Israeli had come with Hebrew books, Spanish books, and of course the Indian languages, Bengali, Assamese, Kannada, Malayalam, Marathi have been very, very common. So we are most welcome, even though all our posts go out in English, but we are migrants ourselves and we would love to explore more of Kannada literature as well.
Yeah, I was just telling them that I think Shruti and Harsh haven't grown up in Bangalore. So I was saying it's amazing that they've created something that the city is so proud of. I mean, it's fantastic that you're doing this. When I visited Cubbon, I met some really fascinating people. I'm not sure if they're here. There was someone who was typing out 108 poems on a typewriter. Like she was just doing it on the spot. Like she would ask you for your name and she would just type a poem on the spot. There was someone else who was composing Tamil poems. And so they were like really, so what are some of the interesting people that you've encountered, Shruti, through this?
That's actually a very exciting point for us because Cubbon Reads is essentially a silent space. But we've met their music producer who had his headphones on and he was DJing to some music there because he was mixing some music for a later show he had in the evening. We've met wall climbers, we've met skateboarders, we've met a filter coffee enthusiast who's promised to take a whole bunch of us on a walking tour of just filter coffee in the city. We've met stargazers, birders, bakers, people from the food industry. I mean, the list just continues to go on. And I think that's also because all these people are readers, but of various interests and various levels, and they choose to read what they want to. So yeah, the list just continues to go on.
Right. And I don't know, the rest of us who sort of seem to live more noisy lives don't seem to encounter such fascinating people. So maybe silence is the key. Yeah. I mean, besides brand marketers, who I'm sure will be flocking to you in any case, can you talk about takeaways, Harsh, for community builders? Because you have built a really remarkable community in a very short time. And what are some of the lessons you've learned that you think others can learn from as well?
Sure. So if you're building communities, it has to have an ideology. And that ideology has to be very relatable. So in our case, anti-hustle and silence became the ideology with which we built this community. I also ran a startup before this called Your Code, where originality of writing became the ideology. So people would flag and report posts which will plagiarized. So every community, I think, if you look around, TED is a very good example. That idea, they are democratizing idea. Every idea is worth sharing. The tagline itself is the ideology which everyone wants to take it forward. So silence became the norm, and making reading outdoors normalized is also a mission with a lot of our curators across different chapters relate to, because when they started reaching us on our Cubbon Reads page that, hey, we want to create something why don't you create something in Bombay or Delhi? We would just spin it off as a question to them. Hey, why don't you create? We have a playbook ready. You don't have to do anything. You just have to go there, find a location and assemble people around you. At the end, you have to stack the books and distribute it. So a lot of people came, and the idea is also, we never mentioned, so nobody knows that we run it until and unless you have seen us written about in the media. And that's also because we want to make sure that it runs for posterity, so that if it becomes about one person, if a community becomes about an individual, then it loses their shelf life, because once the person moves to different cities, then the chapter goes for a toss. So this has allowed us, all the chapters, to continue, because when people move or lose interest, we find another curator to replace them, because the community is larger than the individual.
Right, yeah. I mean, you both are also terrific multitaskers, and I know you're running other communities, which are also quite fascinating. Shruti, would you like to just quickly talk about a couple of the other communities? Yeah.
Sure. So, in fact, what he mentioned about the ideology of silence and just meeting like-minded people, borrowing from that, and also nostalgia, because we both also love being in the outdoors and observing things around us, living the slow pace of life whenever we can, besides our work lives. So we also run something called Pretty Old Cars, which is again a page on Instagram, simply curated basis submissions that we receive from anyone across the world, people walking around on the roads nearby their homes or anywhere. They may be traveling, spotting a car which is broken down or vintage one running on the road, and they would send us a picture or two of them, and we would just feature them on the page. And similarly, there's another community that we have called Midnight Cyclists, which is again about just slowly cycling. It's not about any kind of adrenaline rush or racing against each other. It's just cycling along with your friends from 10:30 p.m. to about 12 a.m. once every week, along with friends in the urban spaces. And again, because for a lot of us, it feels really liberating. I live alone in Bangalore, and it's really liberating to go out and about in the night. So all of these communities that we've built are primarily because of our own interests, of living the slower life whenever we can, of reliving memories from our childhood whenever we can. And we hope a lot of you can also join us in them.
Yeah, it's lovely. And, in fact, I think the midnight cycling is also such a great thing for women, right? Because you're really making it safe for women to come out at night and cycle slowly and sort of take back spaces that are often considered unsafe or whatever for them.
Also, it has also helped us notice a lot of urban policy issues, let's say with regards to how the roads are built, even in places like Indranagar, which are so popular and they're so wealthy, so to say, right? Similarly, with regards to walking, so many of these roads lack a footpath living in Bangalore. So, I mean, it just helps us notice a lot of this a lot more.
Right. Harsh, I think you were talking about how, you've been personally sort of changed by Cubbon Reads, like the way your weekends start and so on. So can you just talk about that as well?
Yeah, I think a lot of Cubbon readers here will relate that the timing really works, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. every Saturday. It sets the tone to our weekend. And secondly, because we are coming every weekend, it makes sure we don't carry the same book the next weekend because it's embarrassing to not have finished. So I have become very accountable as a reader. I read through the week. And earlier I would start different books and leave it in the middle. So it has fostered an accountability, and besides that, of course, a community which I can look out for. Yeah.
What are some of your future plans for this movement?
Sure. So in the ideal case scenario would be that we are not required as a community, and reading outdoors anywhere in the park, on the beach, on a bench by the roadside is considered to be so safe, comfortable, and normal that there is no need for Cubbon Reads as a community. People should be able to come out and about if they're on the bus, in the metro, anywhere. They should just feel comfortable doing that, and there should be no kind of moral policing happening with a single woman sitting in the park and reading by herself. So that's the most ideal case scenario, and we wish to see that everywhere, at least in India.
Adding to that, it has started happening in Cubbon as well. So when we close our Cubbon Reads, people continue to sit and read. On Sundays and Mondays, we get tags from people, hey, look, reading in the park in Cubbon. And I really hope it takes off across different parks in India. Yeah.
No, for sure. I mean, I'm sure the writers want this as well because, so I'm sure Sridhar Balan will agree. But you both are also involved in sort of founding, a new startup. And so how has Cubbon Reads helped you with generating new ideas and directions for your life?
Yeah, so very quickly, we recently launched a dating app for readers where you swipe books, not looks. Yeah, so yeah, that's what, and Cubbon Reads, why Cubbon Reads helped us do that? Because there are 500 people out there. How do you talk to just 2 to 3 who you relate to? And the kind of books we like to read are somewhat niche books, so it's very difficult to find that amongst lay readers. So we launched an app which allows you to filter people. It's like a one-on-one Goodreads. And we got some pretty bookmarks there with our friend Farak. So in case you want to please take that.
And just to add to Harsh's thing, apparently even married folks are welcome to join Bookmark. You don't have to search for a romantic partner. You can just search for a
book
reading,
buddy.
A book buddy. So, yeah. Yeah.